I can't.
Didn't hurt a thing.
All right, let's take our Bibles and open them to the book of Daniel, and we are in the 7th chapter, Daniel chapter 7. Last week we saw the first part of this chapter, and tonight we are going to drop down and begin with verse 15. 7. Daniel chapter 7. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the vision of my head troubled me. And I came near to one of those who stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. Those great beasts which are four kings, or kingdoms, which arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Then I wish to know the truth about the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its nails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet, and the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, before which 3 fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth, which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints, and prevailing against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High. And the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. But the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it forever. Then the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole earth shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. This is the end of the account. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly troubled me, and my countenance changed, but I kept the matter in my heart. Daniel is given the overview of what's commonly referred to as the times of the Gentiles, and it's the same overview that was given in chapter 2 in the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had of the colossal figure. Daniel was able to interpret that dream and said it was a head of gold and the chest and arms of silver, the thoracic area and hips of bronze, and the legs of iron, and the feet of iron mixed with clay, and the 10 toes on the feet being part of that. That was the times of the Gentiles, with the head of gold being the kingdom of Babylon, the silver part of the shoulders and arms being the Medes and the Persians, the brass part in the middle of the body being the kingdom of the Grecians, beginning with Alexander the Great, and the legs and the feet being the revived Roman Empire. It says in chapter 2 that that kingdom was divided. It was divided really in two ways, and Constantinople was established by Constantine, and there became a western part and an eastern part, with Constantinople ruling over the east and Rome ruling over the west. But the divided part really is the fact that around 500 AD, the Roman Empire just imploded, and there's going to be a revival or a coming back of the revived Roman Empire that the Bible is prophesying here. There's another phase of that coming. You and I still live in the times of the Gentiles. They began in 606 BC with Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar, and it will go all the way to the end of the Battle of Armageddon. And Jesus will come back from heaven to fight the Battle of Armageddon, thus ending the times of the Gentiles. In the times of the Gentiles, there are 4 great Gentile world powers that are mentioned. Some people get offended that the United States isn't mentioned. You say, well, did God not see that far? Of course he did. He sees everything. He alone sees the end from the beginning. He chose to give us the representation of this in 4 kingdoms. Many people try to put in that we are part of the revived Roman Empire. That's a big stretch. That's a huge stretch. I don't think that myself. You might, but I don't. Now, we talked just a minute ago about what's taking place over in Iran. And I made the statement we could win every battle and lose this war. The way it could be lost is not on the military front, but on the economic front. With the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the bottleneck of no tankers going through, and the flat refusal of Lloyd's of London and all the big reinsurers completely denying any insurance coverage to any of those oil tankers, the price of oil has skyrocketed. And if it remains high, above $100 a barrel for very long, the domino effect, especially worldwide, maybe not, we don't import near as much of the oil as we used to. Now, what's quite amazing is that the East Crude, Texas East Crude, they hadn't said, well, we're going to keep our prices the same. They've shot their prices up just as high as the rest of them. But India, China, Japan, Indonesia, all of these nations are dependent on oil that comes through the Strait of Hormuz. So it's not so much a price problem with them as it is they just can't get it. They won't be able to get it once the strait has been shut down now for 2 weeks. And the economic dominoes that could fall would be a spike in inflation that could shoot to hyperinflation, that could trigger a tsunami of precursors that could wreck economies real quick. I hope you've been able to realize in the last few years just how delicate of a balance the economies of the world are in, and just how short the stocking is of goods, and how quick the shelves can get empty. And you let a bottleneck come, you know, if China can't get the oil to run their factories and the ships that bring the goods over here and the raw materials they need, if all that begins to come to a grinding halt and the price spikes, the trigger effect would be thus: the Republicans will definitely lose the midterms. Hands down. Once you lose the House and possibly the Senate, there is no more legislation that could come through. Donald Trump would be a lamed up president by the time you get to November. You say, well, it isn't going to be that bad for that long. If you remember what took place with all of the problems of COVID, it took 2.5 years to pull it back. After everything was calmed down, 2.5 years to pull it back. And this global supply chain problem, if enough dominoes fall in the wrong direction, could be in the same arena real quick. And you know, once a few banks go under and you get runs on banks, and you have a credit crisis. You know, everybody's all these big institutions of the world that they're. As somebody told me a minute ago, I'm just hanging on best I can. Well, they're hanging on best they can. A few strikes in the wrong direction, and one domino leads to another domino. You remember in 2008 when Lehman Brothers went down and the tsunami of the financial world that came, there was foreclosures everywhere, and the global economy just tanked. Well, this could be far worse than that. This could be far worse than that. You say, oh, you're a doomsday. You leave that strait closed for too long. You say, well, why doesn't the United States just go in and escort all those ships through? The Iranians were able to seed it with enough landmines that sit dormant on the bottom that they have to, only way to sweep it is manually. And that Strait of Hormuz is 15 miles wide and 90 miles long. And to seed it, to sweep it manually, 8 months to a year. Those mines sit dormant on the bottom. They don't, when a ship comes over the size of a tanker, they begin begin to engage, and then they come up. One mine can disable a huge oil tanker. If it sinks in the middle of the Hormuz Strait, there ain't enough tugboats around to pull that thing out quick. You're months away. So it is if you'll remember just a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump said, we will escort everybody through. Well, he backed off of that quick when he realized that when the military advisors told him what those land mines, those undersea water mines were, and what the problem they presented to get them swept away. So the Iranians aren't totally stupid. They've had a pretty good game plan that they've been working on for 40 to 50 years of how to close the Strait of Hormuz. And now they've done it for 2 weeks against the two of the best militaries in the world, Israel and the United States. And we haven't opened it up yet. And the pressure is building. It is building. And when the oil spigot gets cut off and someone said, well, we now got Venezuela, it's months upon months away from being able to really start sending out enough oil to make a huge difference in the world. So we could win every battle militarily and economically lose the war that could plunge the earth into a depression, a worldwide depression that could be devastating. And the worst problem for us, we would lose the midterms because everybody over here is more interested in their pocketbook than anything else. You know, just think about, we could have Iran off the table, Venezuela off the table, and Cuba off the table. 3 of the worst players in the world. That would really only leave North Korea. And I bet Kim Jong-un would be shaking in his boots at that point. But now then, if all of this worked, you say, you're just a doomsdayer. You start reading the underlying trigger points of the economy of what could take place, and it could go bad quick. You think I need to go get a loaf of bread? You might want to get a box of crackers. It'll last longer than a loaf of bread.
Well, I mean, should we have even gone over there then?
Say again?
Should we have even gone and fought?
Well, you know, one thing I read said that the United States knew what they were going to do to close the strait, and they had a plan, but evidently the plan hadn't worked out like they thought. So if the economy of the world tanks, yeah, we shouldn't have gone over there. Yeah, because the ramifications of pulling it back around are tough, very, very tough. And, you know, once banks quit lending money, once stock markets stop and gold goes through the absolute roof, the dollar starts to lose its value. It's going to get pretty tough quick. I read one scenario on Bahrain, which is over there. They can't get their oil out to sell it. They've got all this debt, and you know they've been high flying, and if they can't start servicing their debt, and they're holding all these treasury notes of the United States, they're going to start selling treasury notes. That causes a humongous problem. So the ramifications are big time. So Ezekiel prophesied that Russia and Iran, Persia, and a Muslim other confederation of nations would come against Israel in the latter days. That is still going to happen. This, what was taking place, could have kicked that can way on down the road, or yet it might come back. It might come back maybe more of an economic tsunami than a bullet tsunami that would come about.
Muslim religion.
But we just kinda go past that, and it's.
What about what now?
The Muslim religion, that's that whole business that's going on down there.
Well,
Is that why NATO countries are not joining us, because of all the Muslims they have over there?
possibly. I just don't think they wanna stick their neck out on anything, but, you know, the European nations don't get a lot of their oil from the you know, President Trump has relaxed some of the stranglehold that's been on Russia, and they get a lot of their oil and gas from Russia. They're not gonna be hurting for it as bad. It's gonna be China, India, Japan, Indonesia, and Africa that's gonna take the hit on it, and Australia. They're gonna take the huge hit on not being able to get the oil, and everybody's gonna pay the price of. Have y'all looked at the price of the pump? And it could go even higher. Well, trucking costs are gonna go up, and so inflation is gonna spike once again. The interest rates cut that our economy was banking on to drop to get the housing market going, well, that's gone by the wayside. You know, they met today and they left interest rates alone. Next month, when they meet, they'll raise them if inflation is shooting up, which it has no choice to, you know, once the cost of fuel goes so high, and then the shipping cost goes up, the trucking cost goes up, and it's just a rolling effect, and it will have a domino effect throughout the whole economy. So it could be devastating. The Muslims, you know, most of the Muslim world are Sunni. There's two factions of Muslims. There's the Sunnis and the Shiites. Iran is Shiite. The Shiites are the way more radical group of the Muslim world. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Jordan, all those countries are Sunni. Iraq was predominantly Shiite. Saddam Hussein, he was Sunni. 20% of the Sunnis of that nation control that nation, but so they don't like the religious flavor of the Muslims in Iran, and what's worse than that, they are what's called Twelvers in the part of the Shiite eschatology. They're looking for the 12th Imam, who will come back and set up a world caliphate to control the world for the Muslim faith. And they believe, and it's part of their total belief system, that two things have to happen before the 12th Imam can come. The great Satan has to be defeated, which is us, the United States, and the little Satan has to be defeated, which is Israel.
And chaos.
Oh, they want chaos. They want total chaos to come. And they may get it. They may get it. They may get it. If you haven't noticed, the world has been on the brink of chaos for a while.
Yes.
Have you ever seen people fight
I have.
at the drop of a hat? I mean, they just go crazy.
Don't even
They
know
fighting on
why.
airplanes. They fighting in airports. They fighting in malls. They fighting everywhere. And they fight over the drop of a hat. And they'll either pull out a gun and shoot you or a knife and cut you. You know, so it's, when I was growing up, we wrestled, and every now and then we'd go to fist, but most of the time it was just wrestling, you know. And we didn't want to get bloody. We just wanted to wrestle a little bit. See if it was tough. But it's a whole different world now. And so the Muslims, Satan's going to use them in a mighty way to achieve his plan.
Would that be the Antichrist?
Yeah. Satan's going to use them in a mighty way to achieve his plan.
How do you think the sleeper cells are going to affect America?
I ain't got a clue.
It's just crazy.
I ain't got a clue on that.
So many.
You know, there's no telling who came across our border for a few years there and where they are and what they're doing. I don't know on that. What I would suggest is you put a gun in your purse or in your car and keep it with you. And make sure you got one at your house. I wouldn't think we would be targets down here for sleeper cells of Iran. They would be in the bigger cities where they could do more damage, but churches might be a target, yes. While we're taking questions, anybody else got a question?
There is a major pipeline.
You pulled the trigger.
There is a major pipeline Saudi Arabia's got from the Persian Gulf
To the Red Sea. 5 million barrels a day. And I've heard they're fixing to open that, but I read somewhere where how many barrels a day go through the Strait of Hormuz. It's way more than 5 million. Way more. I had no idea that many tankers was going through there. But that would alleviate, and the United Arab Emirates has one that cuts the horn off of the strait, and it'll do 1.5 million barrels a day and comes on down past the choke point. Those things might be helpful. Saudi Arabia has had the one that does the 5 million barrels cut off because of the Houthis in the Red Sea. But the Houthis have seemed to stand down somewhat now. Once the tankers start going through there mightily again, they may start shooting them again. And don't know if Lloyd's of London would even write an insurance policy to go through the Red Sea at this point because of the Houthis. And without an insurance policy, none of those tankers are going to go. They're just not going to go.
Russia's gonna be the one that make out for the oil.
They're going to make a killing.
China can get Iran's attention. China can get Iran's attention if they want oil.
Well, the problem is, nobody can do anything about them mines that's down there.
But you would have thought.
Iran don't even know where they put them. They just dropped them off the boat. They can't do nothing about them.
Yeah, bunch of idiots.
You know, the mines are there.
So intelligence didn't know this prior to us going over there and doing that?
They did know it. I don't know if they got them out there before I don't know, but they did know that their plan was to close the Strait of Hormuz. They did know that.
And take the GPS off those mines, that's why they can't find
There
it.
is no GPS on
That's
it.
right.
They trigger when one of those big ships, and something about the displacement and the pressure, so there's nothing electronic, there's no electronic signals. They have to be swept manually
And you can't just.
by
drop
divers.
it
It's divers.
and blow it up.
I mean, it is a painstaking process. It is. It's a painstaking process. And even if Iran won't undo it now, they can't undo it.
Yeah, they don't know where they're at.
They don't want to undo it, but they can't undo it.
Well, that's pretty.
Yeah, I hate to be the bearer of
That's
it.
what-
Let me tell you something. Let me just say this. Let me just say this.
We need to hear this.
When you read the end of this right here in chapter 7, it says King Jesus is coming back. He's going to take name to
Take
King
the
Bud,
name.
and he's going to rule for 1,000 years, and we're going to come back with him, and we're going to rule with him.
That's why I don't worry about it.
Yeah. Some of you will be over Iran, and you'll be over there. I'm gonna be camped out in Hawaii.
You can plan a trip to Hawaii and go.
I'll skip the
You know, the interim to get to the point where King Jesus reigns and wins, there's gonna be a ton of heartache and a ton of suffering that the world has never seen. I don't know for a fact, I think the wars of Ezekiel 38 and 39 happened before the tribulation begins. I don't know if it happens before the church is raptured or after the church is raptured. We could be here for that war, and we could see it. I'm totally convinced that we are raptured before the tribulation begins. We won't see that part of it, but the world's got to be plunged into chaos. There's two things I think that plunge the world into chaos. Number one would be the wars of Ezekiel 38 and 39, which this that we're seeing could lead to that. And number two would be the rapture of the church. we are the salt of the earth and we are the light of the world. And Paul says explicitly that the coming of the man of sin cannot happen while the Holy Spirit is restraining him through the church. It says he will be able to come after he who is restraining is taken out of the way. That's the rapture. And when we are taken out of the way, Satan will be able to implement his plan for the coming of his man of sin. The Muslims think he's the Mahdi, but he's actually the Antichrist. He's the seed of the serpent. He's got 33 titles in the Old Testament, 13 titles in the New Testament. And for him to gain the power that he is going to gain in such a meteoric rise as he's going to have, it's going to have to be very chaotic on this earth. And this earth is going to be plunged into chaos. Hopefully we won't see much of it. We could see the aftermath of something like we're talking about, the economic disaster. You know, there's some significance to the fact that you don't read about the United States in the time period of the tribulation. There's a significance there. God just didn't miss the fact that something takes us down. And it could be a simple scenario like Rome imploding as it did in about 500 AD. We could implode financially. Or the wars of Ezekiel 38 and 39, we get caught up in it. And not only is Russia taken out, but the United States is taken out in a nuclear exchange.
Russia, later, Brent, Russia comes and fights against Israel.
In Ezekiel 38,
doesn't say
39.
anything about us having to deal with Russia before.
There's a passage in Ezekiel 38 and 39 where it speaks of those who dwell safely in the continents or the coastlands. Many Bible scholars believe that's a reference to the United States. I can't conceive of Russia coming against Israel without first striking us in a nuclear exchange. And when you read Ezekiel 38 and 39, there is no ambiguity. It describes a nuclear exchange. It describes a nuclear exchange. Boy, this ain't got nothing to do with Daniel.
Caught up on current events.
Hey, guess what? Y'all ain't gotta watch no news tonight? Y'all ain't gotta watch no news? Does anybody have any good news they'd like to share with
But do
us?
you-
Something better than just leaving us like this. Anybody got any good news?
We woke up today, Brent.
So did the 4 Democrats vote with the Republicans to fund DHS today?
I hadn't heard it.
I hadn't heard it passed.
Anybody hear about that? Did DHS get funded?
I think that was not the vote, the final vote.
Okay.
That was just enough to take it through,
Yeah.
where they do the
Well, you know,
Get to the point of vote.
of course, Facebook don't lie, but that's.
No.
Yeah, you can't believe half of that. So what needs to happen for us? I mean, so there's no way that strait's gonna open, sounds like. I mean, it's just, there's nothing we can do.
I don't see it opening real quick, no.
When did they put the mines in there, brother?
Huh?
When did they put the mines in the strait?
I mean, that's
About
the
2
big
weeks ago.
issue.
They sunk a lot
Oh, I
of
know
it
this.
as the Navy was trying to do them, but I think they got out, and I read 300 to 400, 500, they got out before we got them.
I have one more question. Do you think the people of Iran will uprise and take over their government?
I think they want to. It's hard to when you don't have any guns or any bullets. They got no guns, they got no bullets.
Could we give them some?
We'd be glad to, but we're not gonna put any boots on the ground at this point, so.
We can still pray.
We can still pray.
And that's what we all got left, is to pray.
Y'all, in the Revolutionary Guard, that's the hardliners, they have 1 million of them in it.
Our CG?
They got 1 million of them
With guns.
with guns. There's 1 million.
That's why they killed 50,000 of them.
They got 1 million of them, so it's not an easy thing to take out a million people.
Brent, I noticed you have second thoughts about what they've done. I do too. But it also gives us a confirmation of what Iran would do if they had a nuclear weapon.
They would definitely use it. There is no doubt. There is no doubt. And do I support the president and what he's doing? I do. But, I would sure hate to lose the midterms, which we possibly could. Of course, we could have lost them anyway. But, and I hate for the world economy to get turned upside down. But sometimes you gotta have a little pain to have good gain, and this thing could turn out to be real good. God could bless. And whoever said we could pray, we need to pray. Amen. We need to pray that our military and our president gets good insight on how to handle this crisis.
And pray believing.
Yes, and that God would, because was Iran a bad actor? Absolutely. And if they had their hands on a nuclear weapon, they would use it. Yeah. There is no doubt, they would use it. That is their eschatology, that is their belief. Was Venezuela bad? They were terribly bad. Is Cuba bad? Cuba ain't got enough money to be bad, but they're on the side. They're bad. And so, you know, some of these things that's taking place could weaken China exponentially, which they needed to be weakened. But we just gotta see how it all plays out.
You know, one thing, Brent, is we gotta all remember when President Trump stood in that field, and if he had turned that head 1/4 of an inch, he wouldn't be standing here. And that wasn't just coincidence.
Not at all.
I firmly believe that God spared Trump.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. There is no doubt about that. And hopefully this is all going to turn out for the good. And you may say, well, Brent, you're just an alarmist. And I may well be, you know, I may well be.
If my people.
Yeah.
That was very informative, everything you've been telling us. Because I try to follow it pretty close, and I didn't know all the stuff you was bringing forward. I'm glad you did.
There's nothing they can do about their minds, or they'd have done it.
One more thing, we've got all our kids and grandkids and whatnot, and they may not know, they may not believe and be believers, but if we can prepare where we've got food and we've got stuff to take care of when things get bad, then we can have an opportunity to be able to, you know, give our attention. Because, you know, we do got it in.
Well, that's a good point, Kathy. People are much more open to the gospel when they're scared, when they got a lot of money in their pocket. They are a lot more willing to look to God when things are bad. So we may have some great opportunity through that, for sure. I so apologize, I didn't get very far tonight.
Well, no, I didn't want to drag this, so.
There wasn't no turning her around once I got going. If Jim would have been here though, he was gonna clean your clock tonight. So y'all make him glad he was gonna clean your clock. Thanks for coming. God bless you. You are dismissed.